Hey guys, it's Sean here. In the video, you'll see a very expensive microphone, but I was a derp, and I forgot to check my settings. Turns out my laptop was recording from its own microphone instead of the expensive one. So I've attached some camera audio. Hopefully the video is still watchable. Sorry about that. I just haven't got the time to redo everything, and I'll just fix it in the next round. Thank you. Hey Faza, if you're watching, thanks for inspiring this video. Alright, her question was, for 2,000 ringgit, what is the best budget laptop to get? And now, I don't think I have the answer for that, but 9 months ago, I found myself in exactly the same situation. I was looking for a budget laptop to replace my then broken XPS 13, and I only had probably 2,000 ringgit to spend. So I went online and I searched and I settled for the Honor Magicbook 14. I've been using this laptop for 9 months, and in this video, I'm just going to cover the things that I like, the things I don't like, do some benchmarks, do a bit of gaming, and tell you about whether you should consider buying one yourself. Spoiler alert, I am selling this laptop, but hear me out as to why I'm doing that. So a bit of history, I bought this laptop in 2022. This is the 2021 variant. It comes spec'd with an AMD Ryzen 5 5500U, 8GB of RAM, 256GB SSD, and it comes in a really nice space gray version, which I think looks really sleek and professional. I like it. A few months later, I swapped out the SSD for a 512GB one, and it worked fine. It worked perfectly, and I've been using that since. Okay, let me talk about build quality. This laptop is made out of high quality aluminum, and I think the finish is very beautiful. It has picked up a few dents and scratches over time, but that's expected with any laptop. It doesn't hurt because the laptop is cheap, right? Faza told me that portability was one of her important features. This laptop is pretty portable. It weighs in at less than 1.5 kilograms. I think that's pretty acceptable for a 14-inch Ultrabook. My Dell XPS 13 was a little bit smaller. It was about 100 grams lighter, but I don't really feel a difference. This fits in the backpack perfectly. It's only 16 millimeters in depth, and I gotta say that the keyboard and the trackpad feels really premium. It's very well spaced. I think it's because of the 14-inch form factor. It just gives you a little bit more space to be comfortable without feeling either too cramped or carrying the 15-inch bulk. Let's talk about the screen. So the screen is a 1080p matte IPS panel with relatively thin bezels, giving it a pretty modern look. It does not look out of date at all. And with the IPS display, you're getting pretty good viewing angles. It's not MacBook Pro material, but it's good enough. The matte display also helps reduce reflections and fingerprints, and you'll see why that matters. The panel itself is rated up to 300 nits of brightness, with 100% sRGB, 1000:1 contrast ratio. This is what Honor claims. I don't think this is a laptop you'll scrutinize for the screen in terms of color accuracy, but I will say that when you're outdoors, the 300 nits of brightness does become apparent. It's a little bit dim, and it's just something you gotta be wary about. Also, my favorite part about the screen is that it can fold to 180 degrees, which makes presenting things so much easier. The person next to you, the person opposite you doesn't have to get up and look. It's so much easier, so much more convenient, and I like it. Oh, fun fact, I actually broke the screen once. I accidentally left a pin in between the keyboard and the monitor. It shattered it. I had to get that fixed. Fortunately, it was cheap to do, and it was easy to do. Like, I'm a beginner, and I had that fixed no problem. So props to Honor for repairability. So this laptop comes with 5 ports in total. You have a USB-C port, which you use for charging, and then you have 2 USB-A ports, a full-size HDMI, and a 3.5mm audio jack. One of the main reasons I bought this laptop was for USB-C charging. It was just more convenient to charge my phone with the same charger. I do wish that there was a second USB-C port, because the single USB-C port means that I have to detach the charging cable when I am plugging in dongles which do not have power delivery on them. To Honor's credit though, this was updated in the 2022 version of the Magicbook 14, so good job, good stuff. Also, I guess micro SD card would have been nice. This has not been fixed on the 2022 model, so dongles will continue. Alright, so I think that's enough about the build of the laptop. Let's look at what computing power we have underneath the shell. As all tech reviewers do, I ran Geekbench 6 and Cinebench R23, and the scores are on the screen right now. These numbers mean nothing without direct comparison, so I do want to make a couple notes here by myself. First, the Ryzen 5 5500U is built on Zen 2. That is the same as the 3000 series on desktops. You won't be getting the single core performance gains of the 5000 series on desktop because that's built on Zen 3. So just keep that in mind. The Ryzen 5 5600U is built on Zen 3. Confusing naming scheme, but at this price point, as long as it works, it works. I also think the direct competitor to this processor is the 11th gen Intel i7 1165G7 processor. It's found in most laptops around this range, and if not the i7, it's going to be the i5. So that'll be the benchmark to compare against. In single core, the Ryzen 5 is 20% slower than the Intels, but in multi-core, we're looking at 40% improved performance. I think the reason for that is it's a hexa-core processor compared to the quad-core of the i5s and i7s, and that brings performance gains onto multi-threaded applications. Throttling is also very minimal, which is surprising to see. The 10-minute benchmark only scored 0.5% less than the single pass. Very impressive. The TDP of this processor is rated at 25 watts. It peaks at around 30, according to Hardware Monitor, and thermal performance was excellent. The fans were pleasantly quiet, and while the CPU hit 90 degrees Celsius, the keyboard was nice and cool, and I didn't have any problems using it. Well done. I also ran some productivity benchmarks in Lightroom and DaVinci Resolve. If you're a photographer, you'll find no problem editing in Adobe Lightroom. Masking was smooth, sliders were smooth. Exports might not be the fastest, but that's fine. You just go get some coffee, you'll be back in a bit, and you'll see all your photos rendered. No problem. In DaVinci Resolve, however, I noticed that single 4K 30 was generally smooth. However, adding titles made things stutter with playback around 15 to 20 FPS. In my experience, if you're shooting MOV files, such as off an iPhone, you're going to have to render proxies. And the same thing applies when having more than 2 layers of videos. The experience is going to be stuttery and it's going to make things a lot less tolerable. A gentle reminder that this laptop only has 8 GB of RAM, so I don't think this is what it was intended for, but if you do have to do some editing, you gotta keep that in mind. Render your proxies, I've been saying this since 2020. It will make a world of difference on these low power devices. I ran some gaming benchmarks as well because we all need to get the stress out of our lives sometimes. I tested this laptop's RX Vega 7 integrated GPU on Minecraft, Raft, Overcooked, and GTA 5 at 1080p settings for all of them. In Overcooked 2, it ran perfectly fine, 60 FPS at 50% GPU utilization. This is on highest settings. In Minecraft with Optifine, at medium to high settings, I was getting 60 FPS at 50% GPU utilization. However, if you want to play with shaders, I installed the BSL shader pack and I got 20 FPS at 80% utilization. Not great. In GTA 5 with lower settings, I was seeing 40 FPS at 85% utilization. RAF was pretty hard on the laptop. I was only able to get 22 FPS even at low to medium settings. So you do have to see how demanding your games are. In some games, 1080p is not possible even at lowest settings. So you gotta just take note about that. Next up, battery life. This laptop has a 56 watt-hour battery, which when paired with a low-power Ryzen processor should yield pretty impressive battery life. In my experience, I agree 100%. If I had one word to describe battery life, it is excellent on this laptop. I ran 2 tests, a stress test and then a YouTube video test to drain the battery. During the stress test with Cinebench R20 going on a multi-core loop, it drew up to 30 watts of peak power and the battery lasted 1.5 hours. For the YouTube video drain test, I was playing 1080p YouTube video on loop with full brightness and speaker set to 70%. The laptop lasted just over 5 hours, which is very impressive, and in regular productivity, I've been able to get 6 to 7 hours. It takes about 2 hours to charge this battery, so for the most part, you are spending more time using it than charging it. If you're someone who's traveling a lot, you'll be away from a power outlet, this is a really good laptop to have. Okay, so let's sum it up. So what are my favorite features about this laptop? Well, first, the price. It's incredibly well priced at 1,900 ringgit and it has premium build quality. It feels like a 3,000 ringgit laptop. It feels snappy and it gets the job done. That's all that you can ask for, really. The next favorite thing, probably the battery life. The battery life on this is so good that when I traveled to Europe, I was basically using this as a power brick for when my power bank was charging. I was charging my phone with my laptop and it did not affect my laptop's battery life that much, which is great. My third favorite thing, probably the 180 degree hinge. It just offers incredible flexibility and I use it all the time. So what negatives are there to this laptop? Well, first must be the webcam placement. It's in the keyboard itself, which is terrible. You're gonna see a lot of fingers when you use the laptop's built-in webcam. That said, Honor updated the Magicbook 14 and now the webcam is hidden in the bezel. So that's great. Again, props to Honor. Next, you should probably take note that the SSD slot only supports M.2 NVMe and not M.2 SATA SSDs. I had a SATA SSD lying around, and even though it physically fit the slot and could go in, it was not detected by the laptop's BIOS. So just be wary that you'll need an NVMe drive if you're going to upgrade the storage on this laptop. Speaking about upgrading things, something that is not upgradable is the RAM. And this is the reason I'm selling this laptop. 8GB of RAM is enough for most people, but I am not one of those people, and the inability for me to upgrade the RAM means that I'm stuck with this. I'm the kind of person who has 20 Microsoft Edge tabs and Spotify and Messenger and WhatsApp, and sometimes I like minimizing my games and going back to my browser, forgetting that my game is even loaded at all, then going back to my games. That's something you don't get with 8GB of RAM. You're gonna need 16 or even 32GB of RAM, and that is my deal breaker. That is why I am moving away. Everything else is really good on this laptop. So what would be the best way forward? I think if you have 2,000 ringgit and you know that you're not going to do any heavy work, get this laptop, you'll be happy. But if you can spare the 500 ringgit extra to top up and go for the 16GB variant, this laptop is going to last years longer and you're going to get so much more enjoyment from using it, in my opinion. Well, that's all I have to say. I'm gonna go list this thing and see if anyone wants to buy it. If you have any comments, leave them in the comment section below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you in the next one.